All right, so we should be good. Elodie, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elodie. I'm in my final year at the George Washington University doing my bachelor's degree in geography and GIS. And I've been with the Validation Hub since this past May, and I'm excited to train you guys in JOSM along with Maxwell today.
Maxwell.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maxwell. I'm also a master's student at the George Washington University with the Geography Department. And today I will be your facilitator for the Intro to JOSM.
Excellent. Last but certainly not least, Joanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna. I am a senior at the George Washington University, and I've been with the Hub for about a year now. And I will be monitoring the chat as well as Richard, and we will be able to answer questions in the chat if you don't want to turn your mics on to answer questions, or if it's during while the demos are happening or something.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. As you guys are on here, if you wouldn't mind putting in a little hello in the chat box and letting us know where you're calling in from today, that'd be awesome. Great to see where everyone's coming in from. We ask that you guys do keep your microphones on mute until it's time to ask questions. And as Joanna was just saying, we'll pause from time to time throughout the training, see if there are any questions that need to be answered, as well as questions come to you. If you do not wish to wait until a break, you can write them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them there, or we'll address them verbally once there's a break. Okay. So with that, I will hand it over to Maxwell and Elodie to kick off this training. Thanks, guys.
Great, we can get started. So hi, everyone. Like we said, my name is Elodie, and I'm going to be presenting along with Maxwell, doing an intro to JOSM, and we have it split up where we'll do a section of just like walking through the slides and giving you some background info, and then I'll go through and do a live demo in JOSM so you guys can follow along and ask questions as we go. So I'll just pass it off to Maxwell now.
Yeah, Elodie, your screen says it's still loading. Can you share it again?
Yes, let's try that again. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's working now. Perfect.
Awesome.
Welcome everybody for our session on Intro to JOSM. We're happy to have you all here. Can you move to the next slide? Yes. So to begin with, what a JOSM is basically a Java OpenStreetMap editor. And the good thing about JOSM is you can have it on all operating systems, Windows, Mac, Linux, and it works perfectly. You can download it on your computer and then you can use it to work offline. So it's really, really a powerful editor for making creating data on OSM platform. It's more advanced tool, and then it's in a stable environment. One other good important thing about JOSM you have to know is you can work offline. What I mean is you can get your data from online, and then you can do all your edits offline, and afterwards you push it back to the server. It has this on validation checks that actually helps you to check for type topographical errors, which really gives you more hand in how you do things. You also have a lot of plugins that we will show you in a minute that you can use to be able to make things quite faster, map quite faster as compared to other editors out there. Before we dive in, I will tell you that starting with JOSM could be a little bit intimidating. It's just like any other GIS software. The interface looks a little bit different, but then as you start working with it for some time, you realize that it's very easy, and then you'll find your ways to do things quite faster, and it's more efficient compared to other editors like the ID editor. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is like a screenshot of how JOSM actually looks like. You have all these tools and all these functionalities, and we will be diving through some of the basic mapping and other things, and then how you can really make JOSM a better tool. Can you go to the next slide? Yes, so this slide actually shows you a comparison between the ID editor and JOSM. On the left, you will see the ID editor. You have to map, or like, for example, if you're looking at the building, you have to map all the buildings and square and add the tags. But then with JOSM, it's easy with the building plugin. You can easily map buildings, get it all squared already, and already have building is equal to yes tag. Next slide. So installing JOSM, can you move to the next slide? Before you can actually work with JOSM, you need to have Java already installed on your PC before you can actually use it, because it depends on Java to do most of the backend processing. Next slide. So after you've installed Java, then you can install JOSM. You've provided all the links in the presentation, and after the presentation in the workshop, we are going to share it with you, and you can have a hands-on with that as well. If you have it to, hey, here, next slide. So now we will not spend much time on installing JOSM. We assume that we install it. It's not a difficult application to install. So we will focus more on the setup and how you can actually use JOSM. So when you open JOSM for the first time, this is the interface that you will see. It will first check for updates and also gives you like the new release, and then like a little bit documentation about JOSM and OSM fundraiser as a whole. And you get this nice and good interface. Can you go to the next slide? So to begin with JOSM, you have to first authorize your account or link your account to the OSM database. That will actually help you to be able to map and connect to the JOSM as well as your OSM account, and then all your edits could be pushed back into the JOSM or the OSM server. To be able to do that, you will first have to go to edit, and then under edit, you go to preferences, where you will have like authorize now. Then you click on that, and you go to basic authentication, and then you select, you add your OSM username as well as your password, and then you authorize now, as you can see in the div, and then afterwards it will generate an access token for you, and that is a way that you've connected to your JOSM as well as connecting that to the OSM server. Next slide. So when you do that, you're not actually done. You also need to set a remote control on your system so that it will now serve as a link between your accounts on JOSM and then OSM server, so that it's easy for the OSM server to communicate with your PC locally. So as I already mentioned, when these things are done, then you can map both online and then offline. So to be able to set up a remote control, you still go back to preferences, and then there's a remote control settings on preferences, and then you only need to take enable remote control and hit on OK, and now you are set to go. Next slide, please. Also, as I already mentioned, JOSM is a very powerful tool for mapping and editing and for validation as well. And one of the important and the strong things is about plugins. So plugins are like specialized programs that are developed for a specific task. Like we have the building tools that is developed to actually make mapping of buildings easy, because it comes with automatic square. If you are doing circular buildings, automatic circles, it adds automatic tags for you, and it makes your life easy as compared to other editors. We have the utils plugins that we also normally use, and then we have the map toner, and all these things are specialized plugins that you can use to actually make mapping quite faster and easy for you. There are also more other plugins that you can do. To be able to set a plugin, you still go back to preferences. There are plugins up there, and then the menu will open. We just type in the type of plugin you're looking for. For example, if you want to install the building tools plugin, you just type in buildings. You take that, and then you hit on download links, and then everything will be installed into your JOSM desktop for you. Next slide, please. So I've been talking about setting it up. So let's now look at how you can navigate through JOSM. These are the main blocks of JOSM. We have like the map view, which is the area that you are going to see your data when you download the data from OSM saver, or you put in an image. That is the black area for you. We have the edit tools that gives you all the tools available that you can use, including the building, the select, the add tool. We also have the main menu, which contains several menus with several options that you can explore. You can also customize it depending on how you want to set up your system. And then we have other shortcut tools in addition to the main menu, which you can quickly see other shortcuts like rows, adding of rows, tags, upload, download, and that you can easily do from the shortcut toolbar. And one other important thing is the information panel. So with the information panel, it contains several information. For example, we have the layers, which actually gives you the list of data that you've downloaded or you've opened in your JOSM, and you can actually use that. We will talk more about that in details in a minute. Can you move to the next slide? So now I will hand over to Elodie to give you a quick demo on how the interface and to set JOSM up.
Yes. So can you just confirm they can see JOSM now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I'm just going to walk you guys through some of the things that Maxwell went over. So if you are just setting up JOSM for the first time, the first thing that you'll want to do is go to, for me, it's slightly different. The interface is slightly different depending on what system you're using, but I'm going to open up preferences, which you can find right here at the top bar, or by going to edit and then hit preferences. So the first thing you'll want to do is set up your OSM account and log in. So you will click on the little icon with two computers.
Elodie,
Yes.
pardon me, we can't see the window that's popped up here. Always use the main JOSM window.
Oh. Let's try this again.
You may have to share your entire screen as opposed to the application.
Okay. Is that working now?
Yes, yep, we can see it now.
Yes.
Great. So I'm gonna go through that again. So the first thing you're gonna do is click this little icon right here, or by going to edit and then preferences. And then once you're in preferences, on the left-hand side, go down until you see the icon with the two computers. And then once you're on that, you can log on with your OSM username and password. You can click use OAuth and log in through that. I'm already logged into my account, but once you're logged in, then you should be okay. Sorry to also go through this kind of fast. We just have a lot of information to get through, but hopefully this is, let's see. Next thing I'm going to do is set up the remote control, which I'm going to keep scrolling down on the left-hand side until you get this, see this icon right here with a little rectangle and two red lines. And you're just going to click enable remote control and then hit OK down at the bottom. And this allows JOSM to sync with OSM. And then the last thing we're going to do is hit this puzzle piece here, and you want to download the plugins building tool. So you can click all available, and then you'll want to search for it. Buildings. Which I've downloaded, but it'll look just like this here. And you can check mark that. And then searched for utils plugin 2 and hit the check mark for that one. And then the last one that's helpful is the Mapathon tool. And then once you have all of those checked, you can click download list and then hit OK. And plugins are what make JOSM really efficient and make mapping a lot quicker here. And so the buildings tool and the utils plugin are ones that I use every time I use JOSM, and we'll get into more in a bit about how to use those and some of the other shortcuts. And then just to recap what Maxwell was going over of just the interface, in the center here is your map view. And that is where you will see, just like how in ID editor, you have a layer of your imagery and all the data, that is where it'll be here. And it'll pop up on the right-hand side under layers. If I click on a building, the tags for that building will show up under tags and membership here, and you can add and edit tags as well. And then on the left-hand side is where you have all of your edit tools, and up at the top is where you have all of like your main menu, and you can customize that depending on what plugins you have. And yeah, so hopefully that wasn't too quick and you guys were able to download some of the plugins and log in with your OSM account. And now we are going to switch back to the presentation to Maxwell is going to present about how to map features in JOSM.
Okay, do anybody have a question? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it now. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so we're going to talk about mapping features and how we can do that in JOSM. Next slide. So the first thing we will have to do is downloading our OSM data into JOSM to be able to use it. And there are several ways of doing that. One of the ways is just going to files and download, and then you can simply hit on this icon as well, and then you can it will open an interface where you can specify an area of interest that you are interested in. Usually for starters, we encourage you to start with a place that you know, like your hometown or a neighborhood, and then you can download that small area and then use that to really map and get more familiar with JOSM. So when you identify, for example, your hometown, you just zoom into an area as small as you can. Otherwise, you get an error that the area is too big. and then you will just hit on the download, and then it will download everything directly into JOSM for you, where you will be able to now work with it. Next slide. Yes, so one other way is also to go into OSM.org, and then you zoom into an area of interest of your choice, still using the example earlier on, like going to your hometown or your neighborhood, and you zoom in as much as you can. And then usually it will create this kind of link for you, which also contains like a coordinate of your location. And then you just need to copy that URL from OSM.org, and then you can now use it back in JOSM to be able to download the data. Next slide, I'll show that in the next slide. So to be able to do that, after you copy the link from the OSM.org website, you will come to Files, Open Location, or the shortcut is Control-L, and then you just paste it in the in the space. A pop-up menu will pop up as shown in the screen. You just paste it and then hit on Download URL, and everything will simply download into your JOSM platform. Next slide, please. Yes, so when you download any data into JOSM, this is how the interface looks like. Focusing on the mapping area, you realize that we have this like stripes. This is outside your area of interest, so we always encourage you not to map outside your area of interest. Just focus on your area of interest, and that is the area that you actually downloaded. So you only work in those areas and you don't work outside your area of interest. So one other thing is can you go back? Yeah. So one other thing about this is you can also download data on different steps. So you can download like a first layer, you can download the second layer, a third layer, and then you can have them all in the layer section where you can also organize them. And you can also merge layer 1 and layer 2 into one layer. You can duplicate layers and remove layers if you don't need them. Next slide. So you realize that when we set it up, there is no imagery, it's just a black background with all the data from OSM. So this step here, we're going to talk about how you can set up an imagery. And to be able to do that, we have this imagery menu that you can select. And afterwards, it will drop a list of imagery options ranging from Bing, Esri, Maxa, Macbox, and then you select the imagery that is mostly recent or it fits your project. Usually, if you are working from Task Manager, they will already like give you the image, describe the image that you are supposed to use. So you just use that. But then if you are working on your own project, you will want to try to compare different images to see which one is the most recent that you will want to use. And then you will also see that when you add the imagery, it also pops up in the layer menu, which you can also turn it on and turn it off. Next slide, please. Sometimes when you load an imagery into JOSM, you will need to do a little bit of work to be able to get the best out of the imagery. So sometimes the imagery appearance will not be that good, and there are ways that you can also play with the settings in JOSM to be able to make it more like visually good for your eye, depending on how you want to set things up. So we have this under the layers, we have this eye thing that you can already see from the cave, and then you can actually set like the opacity to, depending on how transparent you want it to look like, the colorfulness, you can really reorganize them to be able to make the image more visible and more appealing to what you're trying to map. Also, you can also load, as I already mentioned, different images, and then you can also try to change all this visibility. And the idea is to actually make the image more presentable in a way that you can see, and then you can be able to distinguish between features. Next slide. So now I will hand it back to Elodie to give you a quick demo on imagery and data download.
Back to JOSM. Okay, so first thing, so we're going to walk you guys through the different ways to download OSM data, and then how to live demo of how to adjust the visibility and play around with the layers. So the first way that you can download data is by going to File, Download Data here in the top hand corner, or you can just click this green downward arrow in the top left of your screen. So if I click that, it is going to populate with this slippy map, and you can zoom around. I'm just going to zoom in to where I currently am in DC. And the trick with this is you don't want to download too much data. You have to zoom in to probably the size of a box from Hot Tasking Manager, if you're familiar with that. So if I just zoom in on GW's campus, you can also use the right hand bit of your mouse to move around, zoom in. I can download, say, just like a block of campus, and I can use the left hand bit of my mouse and drag to create the slippy map. And then once I have an area that's pretty small, I'm going to download, and it is going to populate on the right hand side. You can see how it says data layer 1, and so this is, it just pulled all the data down from OSM. The other way is to go to OpenStreetMap.org, and I can zoom in. Just going to zoom in somewhere else random. Can zoom in all the way, and then go into the link and copy it. And basically what this will do is it'll download the extent of my screen, whatever that's showing. And then I can go back into JOSM after I copied the link and go to File and then Open Location. And so the shortcut, the nice thing about JOSM is it'll show you the keys for the shortcut. So on my computer, it's Command L, and it's slightly different if you're on a PC or Linux or Mac. So File, Open Location, and then you can paste the link that you have. And I have it checked marked as download as new layer. And once I hit download URL, it'll open up on, you can see on the right hand side under layers. And so just like how an ID editor, when you are mapping a task and it has a pink boundary around it where it doesn't want you to edit outside of that, JOSM is the same, where all this like hatched line outside of this main box is kind of like the pink area. Like you don't want to map outside of that. So I'm just going to delete this layer right now, which just by clicking the trash can on the right hand side, and move back to the first layer that I downloaded. And so you can do this by right clicking on data layer, and then, oh, it won't let me zoom to the layer. Let's see. There we go, zoom to layer. And okay, back. And then, so now I'm just going to show you guys how to add imagery. So at the top hand section of your screen, you should see a little button that says imagery. And I will just click on it. And it gives you all the different options here, Bing, Esri, Maxar, just like you would have an ID editor. And so the best practice is when you're working on a task or just working in data and don't know which imagery to use, it's always best to look at a couple different types and sort of compare it. So as you can see, I clicked Bing and it popped up on the right-hand side under layers. And then I'm also just going to download Maxar just so I can compare. So as you can see, Maxar is a lot more blurry and the data doesn't line up quite as nicely with Maxar here compared to Bing. So I'm going to stick with Bing for now. And you can, if I select Bing on the right-hand side, I can click the little I button like Maxwell was talking about. And this is a button that'll allow you to alter the imagery or the visibility of the imagery. So I can play around with the opacity, making it more transparent or not, the colorfulness, just like increases and decreases the saturation. The gamma is really helpful when you're working with data where it maybe sometimes the buildings or the roads or just mapped features seem to almost blend in with the ground. It's helpful to use gamma and increase it because it makes the features pop out more because of the contrast. And then you can also play around with the sharpness, which also helps sometimes if you can't really tell if it's a building or just part of the ground. So you can do that. And then the last thing that I will show you is if I reopen Maxar imagery that I was showing you guys before, you can see that it doesn't really align well with the data that we have. So sometimes if you're working on a project that requires you to use a certain imagery and you're seeing that the data doesn't really line up with the imagery, you can click on imagery at the top and say create imagery offset. And I can click on Maxar imagery, which is the one that I'm looking at right now. And it will pop up with this new box that will allow you to create an imagery offset. So basically what this will do is it'll just drag the imagery to align more clearly with the data that you have. And so when you do this, it doesn't always line up perfectly still. So you might still have to go through and move objects individually, but this can generally be good when you want to align maybe some of the bigger items and try to get everything a little bit closer to where it should be. So that is how you create an imagery offset. I'm just going to cancel that for right now. And then I think that is all. Are there any questions in the chat that I can answer before we move back to the presentation?
No questions in the chat right now.
Perfect. All right, we are going to move back to the presentation then.
Yes, thanks Elodie for the demo. So now we will now move on to editing and creating objects in JOSM, and then mainly you're going to focus on the basic operations. So if you want to know more about advanced, please register for the advanced JOSM training. So with editing, what basically we do as in JOSM is similar to what you do in ID, where you add points, lines, shapes that actually represents real life location of objects. And to do that, we draw like new points, new lines, and new shapes. And then we also like describe what we're trying to draw. For example, if it's a building, if it's a point of interest, then like a shop, you try to add all these attributes to it, which is known as presets. Next slide, please. So to be able to actually do that, I think you've already seen that from Elodie's demo. We use the right mouse button to drag from one area to the other. The left click is for manipulating of features, selecting features, and like doing mostly the mapping stuff. We use the scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. So these are the basic things that you will be using mainly from your mouse for navigation. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier on, we are adding lines, points, and area like features, and you will use these full like operations like the select, which is mainly the S key to select any element or objects that you see. And then you can use that to edit a tag or move object a little bit into to fit what exactly you're trying to map. We use the add, which is the A for adding features like adding a node, adding a way, adding a close way. We also use deletes, which could be the escape key or control deletes to delete features from for example, if you make a mistake. But if you are really working on other areas, we encourage you not to be deleting other features. Like that is not done by you in principle. Next slide. So you hear me mention nodes, ways, and close ways. Maybe you were wondering why I'm saying that. It's a little bit different terminology in the OSM community, but then in principle, they are the same for any GIS project. So mainly a node simply means a point that is used to mark a specific location or for drawing a segment between a location. So a node is basically a point, and then you usually have a longitude and a latitude coordinates attached to these points that gives the spatial component. You also have the way, which is mainly a line segment, which is a connected of two nodes. So when you have one node and another node and then they are connected, you create a line and then it becomes a way. And when you draw a polygon or an area-like feature, then you get a closed way. For example, it's like buildings, island, lakes, all these are closed ways, which creates a polygon-like features. So these are the basic terminologies that you'll be hearing. Hope you don't get confused along the way. Next slide, please. Yeah, so how do you draw a node or a point? Usually you have to make sure that you clear yourself from any selection, and then you hit on the A, which is the add, and then you put it at the location where you want to add the node, and you just double click, and then it will create a node for you. And then if you want to, then you can return back to the select mode by hitting on S or looking at the symbol here. You can do that. Also with the add, you can see it from the edit menu. This actually symbol. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, and you can also add them. Next slide, please. So to also draw a line feature, which is known as way, you simply also the same to make sure you've not selected any feature, and then you hit on the A, and then you start with the, for example, if I'm trying to map a road, you start from one location, and then you start hitting on, you click, until you get to where you want to stop, and then you double click, and then it will create the road for you. Usually you get a line, and then it will ask you to add a tag, which will be shown in the demo in a minute. And then when you're done, you just hit on, you double click, and then everything will create the way for you. Next slide, please. So this is a typical example of how you can actually map a road. So as I mentioned earlier on, make sure there's no selection. You activate it by hitting on A, or you go to the edit and you choose the add option. And then you start drawing from one location by just left clicking. And then when you get to your destination where you want to stop, you double click and then you get your road. And then you also want to add some attributes if you know the area, and then you have some local knowledge of the area. You will want to add some attribute like road is highway, and then it's residential road or classified road. Those in Africa, we have a road classification scheme for Africa, so you can also have a look at that. And then to be able to do that, you hit on the Alt+A, and then it will open this menu as shown in the GIF, and then we just type in the tags. We will talk more about tags in the coming slides for you to really understand what the key is and the value is. Next slide, please. Yes, you can also map polygon-like features or area features by also still making sure you've not made any selection. You hit on the A key to activate the add tool, and then you start drawing around the area that you want to map. And afterwards, you have to make sure that you close it from the beginning node, and that will create the area for you. So you'll always end by the first node that you created, and then you'll be able to now create an area. And similarly, you can use the Alt+A, then you can add the tags. Usually for buildings, if you don't know the area, is buildings equal to yes. If you know the area, you can now add the actual building use to it. If it's an area, for example, in the GIF, you're mapping land use, so you know that this is a land use and the value will be residential. Next slide, please. Yeah, so you already seen I was talking about tags a little bit. So basically we use tags, or other people will call it like attributes, to really describe the geographic data in OpenStreetMap. The idea, if you want to add more description to the element that you map, so that people can actually know exactly what this feature is. And then it's more or less like a key equal value pair. So we have a key, which is a starting string describing the general classification of the feature, like building, and then the value gives more specific information within the class key. So the key and then the generic value are usually lowercase with no spacing. So you need to take note of that anytime you are trying to add a tag. Next slide. So to be able to do that, one of the ways is to, if you remember the menu that I showed earlier on, you can go to the right side under the layer menu. We have an add, and then you can simply add these tags after you've done your mapping of a feature. And then this menu will open, and then you type in the key. So for example, if you actually map a building, you can just hit on the add, type in the key as building, and the value is equal to yes. And that is a tag. And if you know like the use of that building too, you can also add that. We also have a preset, which gives you a more detail. This the same as the tags, but then it gives you more options, and it's also its own menu, and then you can actually add different types of like tags to your map features. Elodie will show more about that in the demo. Next slide, please. So as I also mentioned, with the preset, we have its own menu, and sometimes when you're working, you would want to add some specific attribute or tag to a feature that you map, and then the preset gives you a bunch of attribute names that is already in JOSM that you can use. For example, when you go to man-made, we have bridges, military, we have silos, and you can select all these tags and then automatically add them to your JOSM. To be able to do that, you have to go to the menu, and then you now have to filter through the list of options for what you're looking for, and then you just select it, and then it will be added as a tag for you. Next slide, please. So now I'll hand over to Elodie to give you some demos.
Yes. Okay. So just to start out with, just going to make a new data layer quickly, just so I can show you guys the basics of drawing a node and a way and a closed way or a polygon. So to begin with, when you're in JOSM, the way you move around is by holding the right mouse button and dragging to move alongside the map. And then you can use your left mouse button to click and select an item on the map. And then just by using your scroll wheel or your mouse pad, you can zoom in and zoom out. So the basic things when you are editing in JOSM is, and I'm going to do the keyboard shortcuts. You can, if you click A on your keyboard, your cursor will change. So if I click A, if you watch my cursor, it'll change. And now you know that you're in the add feature. So you can add your elements, such as nodes or ways or a closed way or polygon. And so to do a node, let's close out of that. To do a node, you are just gonna double click with the left side of your mouse. And it just created a node for me. And then to do a way, you are going to click once, and then as you can see, my cursor, the line is extending, and so I can click to the next node, and so you can trace along a road, anything like that. So just by clicking once and then moving my cursor and clicking again, I can create a way. And then to end it, you can double click your left cursor, and now my way is ended. And you can also hit the escape button or go back to select mode by clicking S on your keyboard. So just to practice again, I was still in add mode. So I'm just going to click, click, click. And then instead of double clicking, I'm just going to click S. And as you can see, my cursor changed back to the little pointed arrow and the rectangle. So now I'm in select mode. And so when you're in select mode, I can hover over something. As you can see, it highlights red. And I can, if I click on it, you can click on it and then be able to manipulate that item there. So I'm going to turn back on the imagery for a second. And if I want to delete this, you just want to select it. So it's highlighted red, and then you can either hit Control Delete or use the little trash can at the top. So I'm just going to delete what I already have quickly. And then now I'm just going to practice drawing a road using the imagery. So my cursor right now is in the arrow. It's in the select mode. So to start drawing an element, you're going to hit the A on your keyboard. Or on the left-hand panel, you can see this icon here. You can click that as well. But you'll know that you're in the add mode when your cursor changes, and then you can just click once and then keep clicking to continue extending your road. And then to end, you double click to finish it. And then I'm going to go back to select mode by clicking S, and my cursor changes. And because it's still highlighted red, that item is currently selected. And now I can add tags to it. And so I can, on the right-hand side under tags and membership, I can click add. And this is when you have the key value pair. So I can type in highway equals, we can say unclassified. And once I hit OK, now you can see that that item is now tagged properly on the right-hand side. The other way that you can tag an item is by selecting it again, and up at the top, you can go to presets. And once I hit presets, I can go under highways, I can go to streets, and then I can say that it is a, let's say, primary road. So once I click that, you can put in any extra information that you want. If you know how many lanes it has, like it has 2 lanes here, and you can say apply preset. And here, that now changes on the right-hand side with whatever information that you input. The next thing, and so you can apply tags to nodes, ways, and closed polygons. And so if I wanted to tag a node, I'm just going to change back to the add mode and double click and create a node. And then I can select it here. And then I can go to presets again and say that that is a you can add the whatever value key pair that you want for the node. The last thing I'm going to show is doing a closed way, and so basically what that is just a polygon. And so you'll click A. So if you look at my cursor, if I click A, it moves back into the add mode. And then I can say we're mapping a residential area. You just click all the way around. And then to make it a closed way, you just have to double click back where you started. And so now we have a polygon that we can move around, and we can name that a residential area by going to key would be land use, and then the value would be residential, and then you can click OK. And so that is how you do that. And so you can use the same method by clicking A, and you can draw a building the same way, but just you have to click right back to where you started. And so we're going to go through later how to use the buildings tool, because that makes buildings a lot faster when you're mapping. So if there's any questions in the chat, I can answer them now. If not, we can head back to Maxwell for the presentation. No, okay.
Okay, so now we will now focus more on shortcuts and also on the plugins that I mentioned earlier on for this workshop. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the first plugin is the building tool plugin. And as I mentioned earlier on, it makes life kind of easy. As you can see from the demo already just showed, just using the add, you have to do a lot of steps after add tags. But with the building plugin, you get your building squared, you get automatic tag building is equal to yes, which makes your life easy. You can easily do circular buildings, do T-shape, L-shape building, which will be shown in a minute. Basically, to be able to do that, you just hit on B, or on the edit tool menu, you will see the building plugin with the symbol that you can also select that to activate the building plugin. And you just go to one corner of the building, you just click on that corner, you now click on the next corner, then you can now create a perfect square, and then it will show you how you can create a T L-shaped building in a minute. But then basically that is how you create a building tool. And then as I mentioned earlier on, it automatically generates tags for you, it squares buildings for you. So it makes you map faster and more efficient. Next slide, please. Yes, so one of the tools with one of the cool things about the building plugin is the intrude and the extrude option. So sometimes, or not all buildings are perfect rectangular or square. Sometimes they are U-shaped, they are T, they are L, and you will want to be able to mimic those shapes from your edits. So with the building plugin, you just need to draw one big polygon. You hit on the X for xylophone, and then you can now you see that the symbol will change, and then you can simply break it at where the L, for example, if it's an L-shaped building, where the L needs to be extrude from, and now you can simply double click to create a breaking point, and then you will extrude from there just by dragging the edge to cover or fit the footprints. Next slide. Sometimes you will see areas which is like a heart, which are circular buildings that also needs to be mapped. And then still with the building plugin, you need to make sure it's activated. But then instead of using a rectangular option, you can activate a circular mode by hitting on Alt+Z, and then you will now turn into a circular mode, and all what you need to do is to draw a diameter of the circular building, and then it will automatically generate a circular building for you, and it's also a tax for you. So when you're done and you want to change it back to a rectangular building mode, then you have to hit back on Alt+R, which will now change it from a circular mode to a rectangular building mode. Next slide. Yes, sometimes too, whilst you're mapping, you also face like areas with internal courtyard that you will want to map as shown in the cave imagery. So with that is one of the one challenge that we have to figure out how to do that. With the building plugins, again, it makes your life a little bit easier as compared to other editors. What you basically do is you just have to draw around the area, and then after drawing around the area, you now find a way to merge it by selecting all the smaller squares or rectangular buildings that you draw, and then just hitting on the Shift+J, and that will automatically merge them together, and it will create this internal courtyard for you. But then to be able to do that, you need to make sure that the buildings that you will draw will have to overlap each other to be able to allow merging to happen. Next slide, please. So now let's assume that here you are going to be fixing buildings. Maybe you loaded data from OSM data, OSM server, and then buildings are not, some parts of the buildings are not aligned, or it doesn't reflect what you see in the building footprint or the imagery footprint. So you will want to correct that, or the buildings are not squared. So for you to be able to square buildings, you use the kill key, and then it will automatically square buildings for you. If the building size is bigger than the actual building footprint size, you can use the Control Alt, and then you can resize it, as you can see in the GIF, and that will resize the building, and then you try to make it fit the building footprints or the feature footprints you're trying to map. You can also rotate buildings if it's not like in the actual rotation of the footprint from the imagery. So all these things, you can easily do them fast and quick using JOSM. Other times too, you realize that whilst people are mapping, they tend to like snap for example, one building edge is snapped into another building edge, or is snapped to a road, and then this is not actually how things are represented in space. So you'll want to disconnect them from each other. To be able to do that, you just need to select that feature you will want to unglue, and then hit on the G key to be able to unglue that. So these are some of the basic operations for actually fixing issues using JOSM. Next slide. So now I'll hand it back to Elidu to give you more demos on that.
Cool. All right, so just going to get set up to be able to wait now. Okay, so we're gonna say JOSM. I'm just going to create a new layer just to be able to show you guys some of how to use some of these tools. Just going to open up a blank layer. And so the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to use the buildings tool. So that was one of the plugins that we installed. You can see on my left-hand side, that is the icon for the buildings tool. The shortcut is to hit A, and my cursor will change back to the add, and then hit B, and it'll add that little buildings icon to my cursor. And you can also see that it is highlighted over there. And so to use this, the first thing I'm gonna do is gonna left click on the corner of a building and keep my mouse button, and then I will slide along and hit once more, and then it's going to allow me to drag and adjust the depth of the building till it fits. And then I'm going to left click again to finish it. And if I click select and just click on this building really quickly, you can see that it automatically on the right hand side in the tags box, it automatically tagged the building as building equals yes. And so that is one of the great things about this tool. You don't have to spend the time manually putting that in like you would an ID editor. So I'm just going to show you again how to do this. So I'm going to click A and my cursor will change, and then I'm going to click B on my keyboard, and my cursor changes again to tell me that I'm in the buildings tool. I'm going to click once on the left-hand part of my mouse, and it's going to begin the edge of a building. And then if I click again, that basically puts one side of the building together, and then I can drag however long to adjust the depth of the building. And so you can see that this also automatically squares the buildings together. So that is the basic of how to use this building tool. And so the next thing is how to use the extrude tool, which is great if you are mapping L or U or T-shaped buildings and you have to have a building that has a little bit of like a jut out. And so in order to use this, I will just select any building that I had and hit X on my keyboard, and watch as my cursor changes to now I have this little triangle next to my cursor, which means that I am now in the extrude mode. And so I'm going to double click to add a point at the edge of my building where it would hypothetically extend. So I'm just going to double click in the middle of this wall here. And once I double click, it creates a new node. And now what I can do is press with my left mouse button and drag this building or this wall out. And so you can do that as many times as you want to make the building match what you see in the imagery. So I'm just going to double click again on the center of this line here. Once I double click, I now have this new node here, and I'm going to press and drag this part of the building up. And so with this tool, you also don't need to create a new node. So what I could extend this wall of the building here just by pressing and dragging. I didn't need to double click and create a new node. So just by pressing and dragging, I can do that. So you get in and out of that tool just by clicking X and your cursor will change. The next thing is to show you guys how to make circular buildings. And so once again, this is using the buildings tool. So you can either click on this icon over here to get into the buildings mode, or you can click A and then B on your keyboard. And so once I'm in the buildings mode, you are going to hit Alt-Z on your keyboard if you're on a Mac, or Option-Z if you're on a Mac. No, sorry, Alt-Z if you're on a PC, and then Option-Z if you're on a Mac. And my cursor changed now to this little circular building shaped. It's not square anymore. And so now you know that you're in the circular drawing mode. And so when you have a circular building, you are going to just trace the diameter of the building by clicking once, and then I would trace the diameter and click again. And just by having 2 clicks alone, it creates a perfectly circular building. And if I select this building, you can see that on the right hand side, it already tagged building equals just like it would for a rectangular building. And so I'm in select mode right now. You can tell by my cursor. So if I hit this building tool over here, you can see that I'm still in circle mode. So just to show again, I'm going to click once on the left-hand side of my mouse and then click once more, and it just automatically creates this circular building. So if you need to move in and out of circular and rectangular mode, I am going to hit, to move back into rectangle mode, I'm going to hit Alt-R or Option-R, depending on what cursor you're on. And so just by moving between Alt-Z and Alt-R, you can see as my cursor changes. So if I hit Alt-Z, my cursor changes to the circular mode, and to go back to rectangle, I'm going to hit Alt-R. Okay, so now that I'm in rectangular mode again, I'm going to show you guys how to map buildings that have courtyards in the center. So you're going to start by drawing like how you normally would a rectangular building. I'm going to map one side of it like that. And then I'm going to move back into select mode and select this building, and then go back into my buildings mode on the left-hand side here and map the next wall of the building. And so I'm going to press and hold like this. And by having this wall selected as we create new sides of the building, it's going to automatically make sure that any new building that you draw is either parallel or perpendicular to this original one. So this makes sure that you have just like perfectly square corners to your building. As you can see, it just like automatically does that. So once I have all 4 of these walls drawn, and they all have to be overlapping, so you can see that they're all overlapping, I'm going to hold Shift and select them all. So I have all of them selected, and then by hitting Shift J on my keyboard, it merges them into one polygon. And so I'm just going to do that again quickly. I'm going to hit the buildings tool and draw the first wall, and then I'm going to select that one and then draw all my new buildings and make sure that they're all overlapping. And then I'm going to move back into select mode and hold Shift and select all of them, and then hit Shift J. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to fix buildings. So if you come across a building, let's say we have this one here, and we need to make it bigger, you can hit Control and Alt at the same time, or on a Mac, you would hit Option Command. And my cursor changes now, you can see, to have this little box with this little double-sided arrow. And so as I hold those two keys, Control Alt, you can press and hold on the left side of your mouse to drag it larger or smaller. The same, and then if I wanted to rotate it, I could hit Shift Control or Command Shift if you're on a Mac, and I can now rotate it. And you can see that my cursor changes to show that I'm in rotation mode. And you have to keep pressing and holding on the keys as you do this. And then say I had a building that was connected. So you can see that if I move this building, it moves the other one as well. And so that's because those nodes are glued together. So to unglue those, I would just select the node that is shared between the two buildings, and I just hit G. And this now unglues the node. And so you can do the same thing with the other node. I'm just going to hit G on my keyboard and it unglues them. And then to square this building, you want to select it and then hit Q on your keyboard. And now it's squared. That sums up some of the demo portion. If there's any questions in the chat, I can answer them.
Can you go over how to get the, I know we're running short on time, but there's a question in the chat about hitting the extrude mode. How do you get there again?
Yeah, so if I have a building selected like this, all I'm going to do is just hit X on my keyboard, and you can watch as my cursor changes. And now you can see that it has a little triangle next to it. And so that now puts me in the mode where I can drag on building walls to move it shorter and larger. So it's just hitting X on your keyboard.
Thank you.
All right, so now I'm going to hand it back to Maxwell.
The slide. Yeah, so we are about to wrap up. So this last session, we will talk about how you can actually get data from either the hot tagging manager or the tick tagging manager to JOSM to be able to work with that. So basically what you do is after you've identified the tags, you will just need to make sure that you change your editor mode into JOSM, so that when you hit on contribute on that particular tags that you select, it will automatically load into JOSM for you. Simply because you've already activated the enabled remote option on JOSM, it's able to communicate with the server. Next slide. So one good thing you need to do is you have to frequently update your edits anytime you are working in JOSM. So you hit on the Control Shift plus up arrow, and then it will open the upload option, or there's this arrow that shows up on the menu that you can also use that to upload your edits. To be able to upload, you need to provide a good change set comments, exactly briefly describing what you did. For example, if you added buildings, you added buildings. If you added a tag, you added a tag. If you modified a building, you try to be more descriptive of what you did for other people to actually know and understand what exactly you did. That also make sure you select which kind of imagery that you use. As you already realized from Elodie's demo, if you use Bing imagery, maybe it will be different from using Maxa imagery because of offset issues, and other people will not be able to distinguish that. So you need to make sure you check which imagery that you use before you actually upload your edits into the OSM server. So when you add the tags in the comment section, you activated that, the imagery that you use, you just hit on upload changes and everything will go to upload. Next slide. So basically, is what I already mentioned. So you added rows, you then do your edits, and then everything goes back to your OSM database, and you can quickly see that. Next slide. So yes, when you're done with the edits, now you can go back to OSM, zoom in into the area that you map, and supposedly your edits are supposed to show there. If you don't see it, don't worry. It will take some few minutes for the saver to show all your edits, and then you'll be proud of yourself. Next slide. So as you realize, we've been talking a lot about shortcuts. I know people are like, oh, I'm not going to remember them. Yeah, it's the same for me too. When I started, I was like, how am I going to remember all these shortcuts? But then with time and working on it and using it for several times, you will get hold of it. And then this also actually gives you like a shortcuts cheat sheet that you can always refer to if you don't remember something. And welcome to JOSM community. Next slide. Yes. So do you have any question for us?
Yeah, we're at almost at time here. So this is excellent. Thank you, Elodie and Maxwell. If anybody has some questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask your question, or if you feel more comfortable typing it into the chat, we're happy to address those as well. We will be making this recording available to everybody sometime later this week once we get a the notification that it's been processed. We'll also make these slides available. So if you registered for this particular training, we will email the link to both the video recording and the slides to everybody, so you have access to it to refer back to at any time you wish. I will plug, we have a couple more trainings up. So the idea with these trainings is that we help you develop your skills further. So if you're new to JOSM, what I recommend doing is, and as Maxwell was saying, there's a lot of different shortcuts, a lot of different tools you can use. I suggest you just start using it. If you're used to using ID, great, and you start transitioning to using JOSM, just use it for a small little project, maybe mapping around your neighborhood. Or if you're contributing to a particular project in one of the tasking managers, choose an area that's sort of more rural, less densely populated for features, and try tracing through buildings, maybe correcting a few features. And as you saw, that little shortcut tool, that shortcut image will be very helpful. And once you get used to changing to the building tool, or maybe the unglue, or maybe rotating, things like this, you'll get to using, you'll get used to using these tools, and it'll start becoming kind of more familiar to you. I mean, there's a lot of tools in the software, so it'll take a little while to get used to, but just start using it is what I recommend, and you'll get better and better, more versed, more comfortable with it as you move along. That's the best thing to do. We do have on March 6th, I believe it is. I had it up here a second ago. We have another training, and that is on the advanced JOSM. So for the advanced JOSM, we do require you to have been using JOSM for a little while, because we won't be talking about the intro things at the beginning. We'll assume you know that and move on to some other tools that really sort of help elevate your editing skills within the JOSM toolkit. And then on April 10th, we'll have a training session on validation. So one of the main jobs that we do with the Validation Hub, of course, validating the work that various YouthMappers chapters do, the contributions they make to OSM from around our worldwide network. So we'll actually talk about the workflow which uses JOSM, which is why we use JOSM trainings first, of how you can use JOSM as a tool to validate work that has been done by other members of our network. So again, we'll have a next JOSM training. This will be an advanced JOSM training on March, where to go, on March 6th. And then April 10th will be the one for validation. So they're about a month apart or so. Each one will be at this time and it'll be on a Monday. So 9:30 for our time zone in the morning here, like for an hour and a half, 1.5 hours each time. So that's where we'll be going from there. Elodie, Maxwell, and Joanna, anything from you guys that I've missed? You guys are all good.
No,
Thank
I think
you.
the one thing I would just say in response to the chat, the keyboard shortcuts. Yes, Sarah just sent a link. You can also just look up online JOSM keyboard shortcuts and it will come up.
Awesome, yeah. And we'll make all these materials available to you as soon as we can. Excellent. If there are no questions, then yeah, we're just coming up on time in like 2 or 3 minutes. So I'll stay on for the next few minutes. And if there are any last minute questions, by all means, please feel free to ask. And if you don't have any questions, then thank you very much for coming. We hope to see you again at a new training or another training soon. All right, take care, everybody. Stop recording.